welcome. So we were discussing about language features given by Hockett, and we were discussing cultural transmission. Look at these both pictures. A Cambodian child with an American parent will learn English, not Khmer. Animal communication system vary. In fireflies and cowbirds, they are entirely innate. In finches, the language can learn to make some calls if raised in isolation, but don't learn the full system. A cuckoo will sing a fully developed song even if it never hears another cuckoo sing. And bee dancing is substantially the same in bee colonies in different parts of the world, with only small variations. So in fireflies and cowbirds, the language transmission will be entirely innate. It has not been learned or acquired through cultural transmission. Whereas in finches, the language can learn to make some calls if raised in isolation, but they don't learn the full system. Whereas a cuckoo will sing a fully developed song even if it never hears another cuckoo sing. The next feature is arbitrariness. In animal communication, there is frequently a connection between the signals and the message sent. Sign languages may seem relatively iconic. In animal communication, there is frequently a connection between the signals and the message sent. Sign language may seem relatively iconic. For instance, an animal who wishes to warn an opponent may stimulate an attacking attitude. A cat, for example, will arch its back, spit, and appear ready to pounce. That's her way or body language of her own attacking position. But in human language, the reverse is true. There is no natural link between a linguistic form and its meaning. The symbols used are arbitrary. For example, there is no connection between the word dog in English, Hund in German, Chien in French. It can equally be called Chien and Hund, and we have different symbol referring to dogs. Hence, human language is arbitrary. Arbitrariness in some animal communication systems. Baring teeth, which indicates hostility and readiness to fight. Vervet monkeys has shown the arbitrariness. Distinct arbitrary calls for snakes, leopards, eagles. So we have found arbitrariness in some animal communication, as we have seen in the slide, like vervet monkey. So in vervet monkey, alarm calls are said to have arbitrariness. In same case, there are distinct arbitrary calls for snakes, leopards, eagles, and others. The next feature is displacement. Communication in an immediate environment, communication about things that are absent or about events remote in space or time. Most animals can communicate about things in their immediate environment only. Communication about things that are absent or about events remote in space or time is difficult in the animal language. An animal utters its cry of danger only when danger is present. On the other hand, human language can communicate about things that are absent as easily as about things that are present. So displacement not limited to the here and now. For example, last night, 10 million years ago. In bees, we have limited displacement. They do round dance relatively close. They do sickle dance for intermediate distance, and they do tail waggling dance to show the relatively far. So displacement implies that users of the system can refer to events remotely in space and time. In human language, we have phrases which could help us to reflect on content-bound communication. For example, 10 million years ago, last night, etc. Whereas, animal cannot communicate about imaginary past or future. But in bees, limited displacement has been found. For example, round dance denotes the food or nectar at a relatively close distance. Sickle dance denotes the food or nectar at the intermediate distance. Tail waggling dance denotes the food or nectar at a relatively far distance. So the next feature we are going to talk about is discreteness, duality of structure, duality of patterning. System decomposable into smaller recombinable parts. A, per, r, ter combine to form trap, part, wrapped. That beautiful woman gave me flowers. That woman gave me flowers. She gave me flowers. Let's understand this feature. In the human being, most sounds become meaningful only when they are combined with other sounds. The language system is decomposable into smaller, recombinable parts. For example, sounds like a, p, r and t can be combined to form a trap, part or wrapped, but not other combinations. One more example, that beautiful woman gave me flowers, that woman gave me flowers, she gave me that flowers. So this shows discreteness of the language. In animal communication system, there is no discreteness. Animals have a stock of sounds. For example, cow has 10, chimpanzees and gorillas 20 and 30. The number of messages an animal can send is restricted to the number of basic sounds or a few symbol combinations of sounds in the more complex systems. Animals have a stock of sounds. A cow has under 10, while chimpanzees and gorillas have between 20 and 30, which they can use only once. Hence, there is no discreteness in animal communication system. There are exceptions. For example, in bee dance, and pattern and direction can be combined for different meanings. So in animal communication, discreteness is visible in some of the exceptions. For example, in bees, the waggle dance, the sickle dance, patterns and directions can be combined for different meanings. But that's very rare. The next feature of the language is productivity. Unlimited potential to express novel ideas. Language has definitely unlimited potential to express novel ideas. Elements of systems are fixed or infinite. Intonational phenomena in Sefton identified to date can be described exclusively with nuclear pitch accent or dolphins. Let's understand this feature. Are the elements of the human system fixed or infinite? The answer is infinite in human system. Human can create new expressions and novel utterances. Humans have unlimited potential to express novel ideas, intonation speech, different accent and other creative expressions, where an exception in animal communication, dolphins, in spite of their intelligence, use a large number of clicks, whistles and squawks to communicate merely about the same thing over and over again. There are other features of human language. Human language does have many other properties, but they may not be unique to it. Some of the features may be vocal auditory channel. Human linguistic communication is typically generated via the vocal organs and perceived by the ears. However, linguistic communication can be transmitted without sound via writing. Moreover, many other species such as dolphins also use the vocal auditory channel. The next feature is broadcast, transmission and directional reception and rapid fading. Broadcast transmission and directional reception. A signal can be heard by any auditory system within earshot, and the source can be located using the ear's direction finding ability. Whereas rapid fading in auditory signals are transitory and do not await the hearer's convenience, unlike animals or writing. The next feature is interchangeability. Any speaker, sender of a linguistic signal can also be a listener or receiver, and speakers hear and can reflect upon everything that they say, unlike the visual display often used in animal courtship, which is not visible to the displayed. This is known as total feedback. Specialization. The sound waves of speech have no function other than to signal meaning, unlike the audible panting of dogs, which has a biological purpose. So, in the conclusion, we would like to talk about the most distinctive characteristic which set us apart from other life forms is the highly evolved mode of communication which we call language. Philosophers and scientists have long debated the nature and use of language, and even today there is no consensus as to when exactly man started to speak. Several principles operate at the level of learning of language. These involve knowledge of the sound system and the meaning of words and appropriate social context of use. We have attempted to place in a proper perspective the origin of language and investigated the reasons that make the human language unique. Let's study some researches on chimps. 20th century hypothesis: maybe chimps don't use human language because of a lack of opportunity to learn it. So some studies have been done on the chimps. So we are talking about that, and the first one, the 20th century hypothesis. Chimps' vocal tract are not suited to speech, but sign language is okay. As per the 20th century hypothesis, the chimps don't use human language because they lack the opportunity to learn it, but it has also been seen that the vocal tract of the chimps is not suited to speech, though they tend to learn sign language. They can learn to associate with arbitrary signs, can learn to use signs spontaneously, can learn to use signs creatively. For example, Washoe, one of the chimpanzees, they use word water bird for swan. They can invent totally new signs. For example, Washoe invented a new sign for bips. Can produce creative solutions to problem. For example, Kanzi, one of the chimps, when friend Austin the chimp was moved out of the compound, Kanzi got lonely and typed Austin TV to request a videotape of Austin. This picture which shows Coco, Michael, Nedium, they are the chimpanzees which are being used for the research, and they are right now making some signs of love, fruit and play. But chimps have some limitations. They have a limitations of syntax. They were able to utter 2-3 signs at stress. They have an inconsistent word order. Noam Chomsky, it is hardly likely that Noam Chomsky said that it is highly likely that some species has this capacity, but has never thought to use it until instructed by humans. The evidence suggests that the most rudimentary features of human language are far beyond the capacity of otherwise intelligent apes, just as the capacity to fly or homing instincts of pigeons lie beyond the capacity of humans. Now, look at this, the enlargement of pharynx. That is also a very crucial feature of the language development. A crucial language development is the enlargement of the pharyngeal area that lies above the larynx and just below the mouth. In newborn and adult chimpanzees, the larynx exists in mouth, whereas in adults it exists into pharynx. So let's discuss this in detail. As we were discussing that the vocal tract plays a major role in articulating the language here, we are understanding the one aspect of enlargement of pharynx, the pharyngeal area that lies above the larynx and just below the mouth. Look at the picture. In newborn and adult chimpanzee, the larynx exists in the mouth, whereas in adults it exists into the pharynx. This anatomical difference greatly influences the number of sounds produced, for example, a, e, u. So, human language seems to be qualitatively different from animal communication system. Human vocal tract even seems designed for speech. So, language, as you know, is many things: a system of communication, a medium of thought, a vehicle for literary expression, a social institution, and a factor in nation building. And we definitely have a curiosity about how language is organized and used in different forms. How is language related to linguistics? So, linguistics, the word originates from the Latin word lingua, which means tongue, and linguistics must therefore certainly deal with the language. Fundamentally, the field is concerned with the nature of language and communication. It is apparent that people have been fascinated by the language and communication for thousands of years, yet in many ways we are only beginning to understand the complex nature of this aspect of human life. If we ask what is nature of language or how does communication work, we quickly realize that these questions have no simple answers and are much too broad to be answered in a direct way. Similarly, questions as what is energy or what is matter cannot be answered in a simple fashion. And indeed, the entire field of physics is an attempt to answer them. Linguistics is no different. The field as a whole represents an attempt to break down the broad question about the nature of language and communication into smaller, more manageable questions that we can hope to answer, and in so doing establish reasonable results that we can build on in moving closer to answers to the larger questions, unless we limit our sights in this way and restrict ourselves to particular frameworks for examining different aspects of language and communication. We cannot hope to make progress in answering the broad questions that have fascinated people for so long. As we will see, the field covers a surprisingly broad range of topics related to language and communication. Linguistics is the scientific study of language. When we consider the study scientifically, we basically consider the study which explains why things are the way they are. It is a search for explanation, an attempt to answer the question why, which is the essence of science. The function of scientific theory is not only to explain the data, but also to predict the potential data. Hence, a linguist, just like a scientist, explains the observe data of natural languages alive or dead by constructing hypotheses, theories and laws. And like scientific theories, a linguistic theory must not only explain the observed data but also predict that which constitute potential though not actual data. What do we understand by the word study? Is there a difference between learning a language and studying a language? All of us have learned to use at least two languages, our mother tongue and English. Learning a language means learning how to use the language. However, when we say linguist studies a language, we mean he or she studies a mechanism of language, that he or she studies the way of language works. Linguistics comprises language in all its forms and manifestation. Its aim is to seek a scientific understanding of language and the ways in which it is organized to fulfill the needs it serves and the function it performs in human life. So we'll discuss about the linguistics and how linguistics is related to the language in the coming session. Till then, have a nice day. Thank you.